What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Dave Hollenbach. Hollenbach?
Yep, you got it right, man.
Oh, man. We didn't even talk about that beforehand. That was just... That is complete guess. So, Dave, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Today's been a busy day. I've been doing a lot of podcasts lately, and I've got my podcast as well. So it's been a good day talking a lot of cool stuff. So
yeah, man. I've been doing a lot of podcast recording. I'm doing like an average of 4 to 6 podcasts a day.
Holy jeez, man.
You're my last for today. So I've been going back to back.
Man.
Yeah. It's been good though, man. It's been good. I enjoy what I do. I love it.
So how many do you publish a week?
I publish 3 a week. I batch record though. So like right now, so just for everyone's tracking, by the time you listen to this is probably going to be June timeframe. But we're recording right now. It's March 1st. So I record in batches and like large batches, and then I batch them out so that I'm good for, weeks or months at a time. So then I can like focus on other parts of my business. I don't have to worry about recording. It's good to go. I just got to do the production and let it kind of like drip in.
Yeah. Nice.
So, and then I'll just do recordings on other people's podcasts where I'll come and be a guest host and do the same thing. So
yeah, cool.
So, yeah. So for those of you that don't know Dave, let me go ahead and introduce him properly. Dave, Battalion Chief Dave Hollenbach, retired, is the author of Fireproof, your grand strategy for transforming failure into fuel for your future. He is a motivational speaker, coach, and mentor. He owns and operates Dave Hollenbach Consulting, LLC, and hosts his popular podcast, From Embers to Excellence. During his 23-year career in the fire service, he served as a firefighter, an apparatus driver, pump operator, engineer, company officer / lieutenant, battalion chief in operations, chief of special operations, critical incident stress management, peer counselor, public safety rescue diver, and coordinator and developer of his development's first leadership development program. Dave Hollenbach is a veteran of the United States Navy with a master's degree in public administration from Barry University. A major focus of research for his capstone was how strong positive leadership can influence the culture of a large organization. While studying at Barry University, he published The Firefighter's Creed and Women in the Fire Service, A Diverse Culture Leads to a Successful Culture, an article highlighting the importance of gender diversity within the fire service in Fire Engineering magazine. He spent years as an instructor, coach, and mentor helping others define and realize success. Although he no longer works as a servant to the community, his passion for service to others remains stronger than ever. For more information to invite Dave to speak at your upcoming event, you can go to www.hollenbachleadership.com for those of you there. Man. So, Dave, let's talk about your service, man. I love talking about. I'm an Army vet, so I love talking to vets about their service.
Cool. Yeah, man. Not many people read that whole thing there. So thanks.
You're very welcome.
I come from the fire. I was born and raised in the fire service. Well, I say born. When I was born, my dad was in the Navy. So, I followed in his footsteps with the Navy and the fire department. He did 44 years in the fire service.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't quite hit that mark. So, when I left the fire service, that is actually a topic in my book. It was actually the catalyst for me finishing my book and doing the podcast.
It's a great name, by the way.
Well, I spent a bulk of my, in my fire service career, once I made lieutenant, I realized very quickly that I had not prepared to lead anybody. let alone myself. And uh, I I learned a lot from Army guys. You know, the one of the firefighters on my crew, his Army Ranger, he helped me develop the leadership program that um, I, I don't know if it's still in use today, but I'm sure parts of it are still alive and well in that department. But a great friend of mine was who I turned to when I was struggling with really figuring out what kind of a leader I wanted to be. And his background was in the Army. And when he got out of the Army, he went into the fire service, and he's very well known in South Florida. And it's just, I mean, he's a pretty awesome dude. He works for Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. And, leadership was one of those topics that he and I bonded on. And he really guided me toward being a better leader and understanding what that meant. And so through my career from that point, the advanced years of my career, where I was leading others, I felt it was important to develop leaders within that department and within the fire service. So I was instructing a lot, and I built a program with some really awesome people. And one of the things that I realized when I left the fire service is that I hadn't been living up to my own standards, and I wasn't taking care of my own mental health, and I was struggling with PTSD, and started making some pretty poor decisions in my personal life, which led to not a great departure from the fire service. And so that's the From Embers to Excellence, and transforming failure into fuel for your future.
Yeah.
I went from being a very well-respected battalion chief to being ashamed. I made some pretty dumb decisions in my personal life, and it was because I wasn't taking care of myself. And what a lot of people do, veterans, first responders especially, when we're struggling with stuff, we don't want to talk about it.
We bury that. We put that shit deep down
and
just lock it away.
And then you do what you can to feel numb, to not feel the feelings.
And then drink some Jack.
Yeah, man. And I did a lot of that. And all it did was compound my problems. And so, that's where I found myself being pretty, eating a huge pie, not just the slice of humble pie, but the whole freaking pie, and figuring out what I needed to do to make things right in my life. And I'd been a student of philosophy, and I'd been teaching leadership for so long, and I didn't. I had these blind spots, where I wasn't really taking care of myself, and so that was part of the shame that came with those experiences. And so
like you should have known better.
Well, it's those experiences, and that's what I try and share in the book, is that we can beat ourselves up all day long, but it's not going to change anything. We got to give ourselves some grace and move past that.
Yeah.
We might have missed the mark, but like they teach when you're at the gun range, you miss that first shot. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
You've got to adjust your aim and take the next shot. So I started to really work on myself after a little bit of a dark period there, and realized, if you don't know where you're going, you're a ship lost at sea, and you've got to have that purpose, and there's nobody else that can define your purpose for you. It's something that you got to figure out for yourself. And I feel like it's pretty universal at its core. I believe we're all here to add value to those around us, and how we do that is up to us, and that's what makes us unique.
You're going over a lot of very powerful stuff right now, and this is going to be, I can already tell this is going to be a great podcast, because I think we're both about to get some vulnerability out. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is, and I'm going to work backwards from everything you said, is you're talking about not knowing where you're going, right? Like a ship lost at sea. I think there's an extra piece of this, and what I've noticed in my life, it's not just not knowing where you're going, but sometimes you don't even know where you're at.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid to look in the mirror and actually take accountability for your current situation, for your current actions, and really like take that true account. It's almost like a lot of us, we lie to ourselves. We lie to ourselves about what our current situation is. We talk a big game, and that's ultimately what this all comes down to is like keeping the promises that you make to yourself, right? Being a good person and being honest with yourself. And too often we lie to ourselves, and it's like basically like being lost in the woods. You don't know your current location, you don't know where you're at, and then you also don't know where you're going. So like there's no way. There's no, like, you're literally just wandering aimlessly in the woods. And what happens is you become like you're out of alignment with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And it causes you to do things that are out of character. It causes you to do things that if you were in the right mind, you wouldn't do, and we see this with men. And one with women too, but I've seen this a lot with men, and the actions they take, and the things that they do, and the way that they treat people, and you become a slave to your vices, to alcohol, sex, masturbation, drugs, right? And it literally eats away at your soul.
Yeah.
It's because you have no idea where you're going,
Yeah.
right? And I went through, and here's the other thing is I want to talk about is this happens to a lot of veterans and people that are in emergency services when they get out, right? Because that you put somebody into a very highly regulated environment, everything's monitored, and now you give them complete freedom, and it's just like, well, what do I do? I was like, I don't know. It's just kind of like, and slowly, it's like a slow decline, like you're sitting in a stick shift truck, and you just let off the gas, and you left the brake, and it's just slowly going back downhill. And before you know it, you're like, man, where am I? How did I get here? Right. Yeah. Same thing happened to me when I got out of the military, man. And I mean, it was actually happening to me when I was on my way out of the military, to be honest, if I'm being very, very transparent. And I got to some dark places. I got some real dark places. And I was ashamed about it for a long time. I got to the point to where I was contemplating suicide. My PTSD was out of control. Like my emotional range was terrible. and I was just, medicating it with a lot of alcohol and sex with random people.
Yeah.
Like it was just bad. It was terrible. Honestly, and I look back, and I made excuses for everything, right? I made excuses for everything. And it was just like, well, it's because of this and that, the other. And there's no, they're wrong. They're at fault because of this. And, she broke up with me because of this, and it was her fault or whatever. And man, when I started taking more accountability in my life, and I started to like go back to the basics of like disciplined basics that make you a good person, and like what leadership is really built upon is like leading yourself first, right? And all of these things, and all the services, and I'm sure in all emergency services. And I started going back to those things. I started to do the right thing. I started to take account of my life. And when I started to take account of my life, I started to look back at the last few years, and I was like, man, I was kind of a terrible person. And it's not like I felt genuinely bad, and I started to like, but that was the pathway I needed to take in order to forgive myself, right? And it's such a powerful, and I could tell you've been through probably a very similar journey.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's life changing when you can face yourself in those dark recesses of your mind and all the things that you've done, and you can accept it, and then forgive yourself for it. Give yourself some grace. Forgive yourself for it. Let it go. You don't have to blame anybody else. Don't worry about them, right? Worry about you. Yeah. And then, man, what happens is that you live a more fulfilling life. The pathway, right? It's like all of a sudden you know where you're at. It's like all of a sudden you've been given a map and a protractor, and you're like, oh, this is where I'm at. Oh shit! And then you're like, and the pathway kind of opens up. You're like, this is exactly where I need to go, and it's almost miraculous. Right.
Amen. Yeah. I want to share something because this was so profound to me. I just had this woman, Marsha Van Weinsberg, on I just interviewed her.
I talked to her too.
Yeah. She's freaking incredible, right?
She's incredible. Yeah.
So this is what she said that I told her I'm stealing it, but not really, because I'll give her credit. What she said was, her book is When She Stopped Asking Why. And so I asked her about that, and she was like, yeah, when you stop going, why is this happening to me? Why me? Why is this happening to us? It's that whole woe is me victim mentality. And we've all been there. You can't, fault anybody for that, because I think it's pretty natural. But it's when you can shift from asking why to asking what am I doing about it? What are my next actions? What am I going to do to show up for the people I love? That is the question that you got to ask yourself, and stop, beating yourself up, or, being woe is me, because everybody goes through shit, some more than others, but, and I don't want to go down that path, like comparing traumas and all that stuff, but it's, we all make mistakes, and sometimes, we can find ourselves in a really dark place because of decisions that we make, not because of some outside miraculous force, but like our personal actions, our decisions that we make put ourselves in a really deep hole, and it can almost, well, it can feel hopeless. This is where I was in that deep hole, and I talk about it in my book. When I left the fire service, it was not my decision. I signed papers accepting. Well, even then I fought it. But I made some poor decisions that I needed to own, and I needed to, it was a blessing, because I really needed to focus on my own personal mental health. I was struggling with PTSD really bad and didn't want to admit it. And self-medication seems to be a go-to for a lot of vets and a lot of first responders. You drink, drug, sex, I interviewed a Navy SEAL on my show who said, yeah, when you talk, he was like, when I've counseled a lot of my men, it was always a combination of, or just one of the 3 B's. And I was like, 3 B's? He's like, beers, bucks, or babes. And I think it was all 3 for me. So,
It's that's the dude. It's so right. I remember being when I was at company command, and it was like always cats and soldiers on like those 3 things. It's like constant, right? And to back to one of your points, I'm gonna make a sales connection here, right? You talked about Marsha Van Weinsberg and how she, in her book, she talks about getting rid of questions that are why. Ask more questions or what. I usually say questions that are what and how. Like, what can I do about this? How can I overcome this kind of thing, right? Because why is very accusatory.
Yeah.
Like, think about it like this. If I'm sitting down, I'm talking to you, and you're telling me your story. You're telling me your story about it wasn't your decision. I can say, why did you do that? Right. And that's very much like, or I can say, what happened that caused that to transpire?
Yeah.
I'm asking the same question, right? But one is very like in your face, and it's very aggressive and very accusatory. Whereas the other, I'm more like highlighting the situation, right? And so you can take your focus off of not taking offense. And that's the problem, is a lot of people will take that question, they'll ask themselves why. It's like how you speak to yourself on a daily basis. And every second of the day, asking that why question, it's like you're constantly pointing the finger to yourself, right? I do this in sales all the time. You want to ask questions for your clients. You want to get to understand them. And in insurance, if you're sitting there and you're like, hey, someone doesn't have insurance, and you're like, and they haven't had it for 10 years. If you were to be like, why don't you have insurance? Then they're going to be like, that's kind of a dick question to ask. But I could say, hey, what's prevented you from getting insurance? Right? Now that's a completely different way to pose a question. Then they can say, oh, well, I haven't got it because I haven't had the money. My budget's been tight. I haven't found anything that fit for me. I had a medical condition that precluded me for 8 years before I could get through it to get really good coverage, this, that, the other, right? But if I'm like, why don't you have insurance? That's kind of like that. I mean, they're both the same question. They're both going to get the same answer technically. But it's like, hey, rephrase the questions that you're asking yourself and asking people, and what you'll find is you'll have a better response.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's just, when you were talking about that, that was the first thing I thought about. And I was like, dude, this is perfect segue. And it change the way that you're speaking to yourself. Change the questions you're asking yourself, because that's all we do all day long is we ask questions. Your conscious brain asks questions, your subconscious brain answers them, which drives your actions. Like, it's kind of just the way our mind works, right? And if you change the questions that you're asking yourself, it will change the actions. It'll change the answers, and it'll change the actions that you do going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, man.
So,
and we had the conversation, Marsha and I, we were talking, because I said I couldn't help but notice that whole why. You're familiar with Simon Sinek, whose book Why,
start with why.
Yeah, start with why. A very different question, in that context. You're talking more about the purpose. What's driving the how and the what, and it's who you are, and when you're beating yourself up going, oh, why is this happening to me? It's a much different question than, what am I going to do to fix this, to remedy this? The ownership is on you taking action. It's more of instead of being the victim, being the person that's acting on the situation. And what is driving you is that, the real why. And I believe that, just from overcoming my mental health issues, really part of it was when I left the fire service, I mean, I felt like I had lost everything. I lost my identity. I lost who I was. I lost the, in my mind, I had lost the respect of my friends and family and, all that. And,
dude, I understand you so well. I understand you so well. This is ridiculous. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I went to a really dark place, and the night that changed everything for me was, I drank to excess and made a decision to drive my truck into a wall. And when I left the bar, people hung out making sure that I didn't drive, and I was like, looking at my phone, the lift is almost here. I'll see you guys later. And then got in my truck, and I had made that decision. I rolled my windows down, unbuckled my seatbelt, put my foot to the floor, and took my hands off the steering wheel. I had taken aim at the wall, and knew that if I glanced off of it, I was hitting a tree. So I was making sure it happened. And when I took my hands off the wheel, I looked up to ask for forgiveness. I remember that was the intention when I looked up. But on my visor, it's a picture of me holding my daughter on the day she was born. And in that instant, I slammed on the brakes and everything went black. And I woke up in my bed the next day, ashamed, terrified at what I almost did, and couldn't believe that I almost did that to my daughter. And that was the day that I committed. I just made a promise to myself and to my daughter, without her knowing it, that I was going to take whatever action I needed to take to be somebody that she could be proud of, to be somebody that I could be proud of. And that began just like small steps. Like I said, I was in a really dark place, and it was a lot of work. But now I know that because of all of that, I'm better able to help others overcome whatever it is that they're facing, what they feel they might have done to their lives. I'm not a therapist or anything, but man, I should be.
Well, I mean, honestly, I would take advice for someone that's been through the same exact thing, or had the same exact experiences. I'm like, it is crazy how much your situation parallels mine. Like identical almost. I don't talk about it much, but I also I got removed from the military as well. And I don't even want to talk about it, to be honest. But I had an affair on my wife, and I always blamed because she had an affair first. And I was like, she cheated on me first, so I cheated on her. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I cheated on her. Now in the military, having an affair is that is a punishable offense under your CFJ. Like, you can go to prison. And I was an officer, and so my ex-wife ended up reporting me. After we got a divorce, she reported me. There's a lot of that goes into the story, and it doesn't really matter at this point. But I felt betrayed. Yeah. I felt hurt. I was ashamed, and I went through a long, year-long process of going through investigations. And you know what I did? It was against my lawyers. My lawyer was like, "Don't do it." Is I went on the stand and I said, "Here's what happened," and I told the whole thing. I was like, "I got nothing to hide. Here's what happened." And she was like, "No, don't do it. I think we can win this." I was like, "I'm not trying to run from anything. This is what happened." And they didn't put me out right away. What they did is they gave me a GOMAR, which is a General Officer Memorandum of Record, which basically is like kind of like it's like a slap on the wrist, like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. And it's just a permanent file in your record that just looks bad. And for an officer, like, it doesn't look good. And so at the time, it was just a convergence of events where at the time they were going through a downsizing because the Army had grown so much that now they had so many people that now they're downsizing, right? And so they basically were downsizing every single person that they were like, hey, we don't think that you're going to make it, as a career because you have this or that in your record, right? Like you have a DUI in your record, you have a GOMAR in your record, right? And I had the GOMAR. And so they just like, hey, we're just going to let you out because, you had a GOMAR. It was that simple. And I was like, son of a bitch, and this is like that was my life. That was my now. And what's crazy is that at the same time, I was also thinking before this all went down, I was actually thinking about getting out because I was like, we got divorced and I was missing the kids and the kids were living in a different state. And I was like, I could be living in the same state. I don't have to be stationed here. And I wanted to be closer to kids. And so my whole perspective had changed, but then it was a lot different when it was forced on me. Yeah. And it was, and so, and I went to a dark place, bro. I went to a dark place in that entire time frame when I was leaving. I went to a dark place when I got out, and I was, trying to fill the void of the divorce and like not having somebody in my life anymore, which I'd been married since I was 20 years old, in college. I my entire adult life, all I'd known is like being with somebody, right? And I get all of a sudden I get divorced and now I'm just like dating. I'm like, I can't be alone. Like I'm dating as soon as, and if I'm not dating, I'm like messing around and fooling around with all these different women. And I'm just trying to fill this void of loneliness and unhappiness and sadness in my life and drinking a lot. Right. And I ended up getting with this woman. That was the wrong woman for me, obviously, as I was getting out of the military. Right. It's literally my last 2 weeks in the military. And I was in Arizona. And I met her. She was a girl that lived there, and she met her, and we hung out. It was fine. It was just a fling. It was just like something nice. And then I left, and I came to Dallas area. This is when I moved here in 2017. When I got out, I was getting a job here. And when I first got here, I was like, we kept talking and texting, and she was like, I really miss you. And I was like, I miss you too. And she ended up moving from Arizona to Dallas to come live with me. And by the way, she was a single mother, and she had a 1-year-old. And now I was like responsible for this 1-year-old, and it completely changed everything. And now I was just like, was just a fling. Now I was like, now I'm completely responsible for her. And I put myself in this position where I'm like, I can't just like kick her out if we don't get along or whatever. Like, it's weird. Like she moved all the way across the country for me, and I was very unhappy. Right. And that unhappiness ate at me, and it just ate at me and it ate at me. And I got even more depressed, and I became even more suicidal. And it came to a head one day where literally I'd been drinking all day. We got into a big fight. I was drinking from like 10 a.m. I had a handle of Jack. I drank like half the Jack. I'm not even kidding you. And I went to go drive to work at 5 p.m. And I went to go drive to a client's appointment that I was at a different insurance. I was at a captive company. And I went upstairs to go get dressed because I would always like put on like that's back in the days. I would put on slacks and I'd have a button up. And she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, because she wouldn't talk to me all day. She's like pissed off. And I was like, I'm going to my appointment. She was like, you can't go. She was like, you're drunk. You can't go. And I was like, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. And we had this exchange of words basically. And I'm also like, you hate me, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, no, I'm just mad. And I'm also drunk at this time, obviously. So I'm trying to explain to her how I feel about it. Right. I'm trying to explain to her like what that does, right, to me when you have these fights, and then she's just like, I'm leaving you, I'm done. And as I'm telling her, I'm trying to explain to her like the feelings that I have, I can just see her eyes just like glass over, right? And she's just like she does not care. she gives 2 shits. And I get probably because I'm drunk. I'm also drunk while I explain this story. So I had started to write a text to my mom. Basically apologizing and saying like, I can't do this anymore. I don't even want to be alive. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. I never meant to disappoint you, blah, blah. And it never explicitly said that I was going to kill myself, but it was very clear, right? And I showed her this text because I typed it out and then I exited out of the app. And so it's still like in the message box waiting to be sent, right? And so it hit me that I'd started typing that because I started typing hours ago. I forgot I was typing it, right? Got distracted with pouring another glass of alcohol. And so it hit me and I was like, see, look, like this is the kind of stuff that's going through my head. And I'm trying to explain to her. And she just looked at me. She was like, oh, just go fucking slit your wrist then. And I fucking lost it, bro. I like it, like that was the moment that the switch flipped and I was like, yep, nobody loves me. I'm out. Like I'm out. So I didn't even say anything. I was just like, oh, okay. And I walked over, I went to my closet, I grabbed my gun, and my gun's in a locked case, like a small locked case, grabbed the case out, pulled my keys out, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm just really slow, just not even paying attention to her. She's pulling my keys out, like unlocking, open. And she's like, the fuck are you doing? She's like screaming at me. And I'm just not even paying attention. I'm just like, and I'm grabbing the gun and I'm taking out the clip and she's calling 911. And she's like freaking out and she runs out of the room. Right. She goes so in another room on the upstairs, the house I was living at the time, there was a room across the landing where her daughter was like watching TV. So she goes in there and she closes the door and she locks it. And so I'm still just like fucking like loading the gun and everything. And then it hit me and I was like, no. She wants me to slit my wrist. She wants me to kill myself. She's going to watch this. Right. She's watching this shit. Like this is what she wanted. Right. I'm like not in my right mind. So I go up to the door and I go to open the door. It's locked. So I just I'm a big dude. I'm like, at this time, I'm like almost 260. I just put my arm on the door and like forced it open because it's a weak door. And she's screaming. I can hear that she's on speakerphone. I can hear the 911 operator, right? Her daughter's screaming. They're screaming their heads off. And she's like, hey, Scott, I got. And I'm sitting there like, you wanted this? And I'm like holding it to my head. And there's something like I like looked, I caught a glimpse of her daughter, and her daughter's like screaming, crying. Like her daughter's only like 2 at this time. And it hit me. I was like, this is not me. And they think I'm gonna hurt them. And I just want to like end my life, right? I'm like not trying to hurt them. And I stopped and I closed the door and I walked downstairs and I went outside and I sat in the backyard on a random little like chair and I called my buddy. A good friend of mine. I told him what's going on. He already knew what was going on because I've been calling him all day. And he was like, bro, it's okay. Like go put the gun up. I was like, dude, she called the cops. I was like, the cops are going to be on their way, bro. And he was like, you haven't done anything. It's okay. Right. And as he's saying this, like cop car. Dude, they had like 10 cop, like SWAT came basically. And they got on loudspeakers. They're like, Gregory Birch, come out of the house. And I'm like, dude, I've never been in trouble with the law, bro. I've like nothing, And I'm like, dude, my life's fucking over, right? Like, what do I do? And he was like, you haven't done anything. Unload your weapon, put it up, go outside, go talk to him, right? So as I go back inside and I'm like, unload my weapon. Cops call me. I talk to him, and they're like, yeah, come on out. Let's talk. So I go outside. Dude, as soon as I walked out that front door, as soon as I like put everything down, I'm like the first step, I lost it, bro. I like did all this wave of emotions and I just started uncontrollably crying. Like, I just couldn't even control it. And the door, I left the front door wide open. Cops going in there, you can see, and I have this, and it's behind me. It's actually above me and behind me. There's my company colors, my guide on from when I was in company command was hanging in my living room over the TV at the time. You could see it clearly from the front yard. And he was like, you're military? And I was like, yeah. And I'm sitting there, this big ass, I'm like 6'7", 260. I'm just fucking crying in the front yard. And he was like, dude, did you deploy? And I was like, yeah. He's like, where? And I was like, Iraq and Afghanistan. He's like, dude, you brought some shit back. You are you going to counseling? I was like, no. He's like, you fucking need to. You fucking need to. And he was like, and he basically was like, he was very kind. This cop was very kind to me. And he was like, let's get you set up a VA. You need to go. You set up VA? I was like, nope. And dude, that was when I started realizing like, I need to start working on myself. Right. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey since that moment. But that was the last time that I was like, I'm never letting myself get in that bad again, ever. Because it was embarrassing. And that whole situation caused a slew of issues with my ex-wife and the custody with our kids. Like, she used that as a justification, but like, hey, they can't come see you. And that happened in May. That happened in May of 2018. I did not get custody. I'm supposed to get summers with the kids, because they stay school years of her, summers with me. I lost that entire summer. I lost the entire summer for 3 summers in a row.
God damn, bro.
And I had to fight custody for that to get it back to normal. And it didn't go back to normal until 2021.
Damn.
Because of my stupid ass decisions and my mistakes. And for a long time, I was upset with my ex-wife. I was like, she's just always coming after me. And when I stopped doing that, when I stopped blaming other people, when I started to take responsibility for my actions, because it was me that put that gun in my head. It was me that let myself get out of control. It was me that drank all that alcohol. It was me that lost emotional control of my mind, my decisions, everything. I caused that. She was actually in the right for doing that, because my kids needed better. And when I stopped doing that and I started taking accountability, dude, I was able to like get my custody back. I got a great relationship with my ex-wife and her husband. Like I go and I stay with them when I go to visit the kids. And when they come, when the kids are here and they come, they stay in my house with me. Like we're like a family. We're all together. Like we do everything together when we're in the same town, and I like that. And I like that dynamic. Right. Yeah. And, so I don't mean to steal the show from you, but like you're sitting there telling your story, and I'm like, dude, this is so parallel. it's ridiculous.
In way more ways than like it would just be me telling the same story, man. Just about.
Yeah. And I've never told this story on my podcast, so you guys are welcome. I have told it on other podcasts a little more in detail. That I don't know anyone from the audience that's listened to it. But that's why I try to help people. That's why, like, when I transitioned and I went through a very, just cathartic and a powerful, transformational process with personal development and letting go of those demons. And man, it's changed my life so much that I want to serve and help other people. And I started doing that as much as I could. And that's why I tell, when I talk to different people I coach or help, or, I don't even do paid coaching. People just reach out to me and they're like, hey, can you help me with this? And I'm like, yeah, bro, I want to help because I want to help everybody. Yeah. I should start charging here soon, but I get reached out to a lot, either whether it's for physical fitness or for leadership or sales. And I always tell them, like, dude, I've been there. I like when they talk to explain how they feel about things and where they're at mentally. And I'm like, dude, I'm there. I've been there. I know exactly where you're at. And I can just tell by talking to somebody, I'm like, I can tell you are out of alignment with yourself. You're out of alignment with your purpose and who you are in your heart. Right. And that's why you're making all these decisions, which is causing that out of alignment to get worse and worse and worse. Yeah. So, yeah, man. Frisbee.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh man, no, this has been great, man. This has been a nice conversation. I feel like a weight's lifted already. Like I just feel like nice, lighthearted. It's great. Man. I mean, to tell you, like it's great to just kind of share that stuff with somebody, even with you. I mean, you don't know me from Adam, and I know you're sharing me. You don't know me. It was the first time we were talking, but sharing that with somebody, isn't it just like man, it's like taking a load off.
Yeah, right? Man. Yeah. I'll shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
So we know that we've had very similar experiences, and I went through very similar transformation. And in you said May of 2021?
It was May of 2018 when that event happened.
But I mean, when you got your kids back.
So I finally got my kids back to where they can come during the summers. It was in 2021. So last summer was the first summer where we had them, but we did a test where I actually went to Florida for 4 weeks, and I just got an Airbnb, and they stayed with me. And so because they live in Florida, they live in Tampa.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So we
hour west of me.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you're telling me where you live, I was like, I don't know what's that. Yeah.
So in, it was April 22nd, 2021. And this was, remember I told you about the Navy SEAL that I interviewed. It was actually two different Navy SEALs that I interviewed, and both of them had some incredible wisdom. You know, and it's interesting. You know, I never went to combat. You know, and so as a firefighter, a lot of times, you know, you have that misguided thought of, you know, I don't have PTSD because I didn't do that kind of shit. But I guarantee you, we've seen a lot of very similar things. And it's not so much what we've seen and what we've experienced, but it's those moments when we felt that helplessness, the fear, the shame, and, you know, did we make the right decision? Did, you know, could I have done this? Would this have changed the outcome? And there's all these things that can haunt you. And this guy, he was like, I want to give you a number. I've sent several of my brothers here, and it changed my life. It changed their life. It'll change your life. And it sounded kind of woo-woo. And I was like, okay, you know, and he kept on calling me and like, hey man, did you send in the application that I sent you? I'm like, no, not yet. I'm going to. And then he called me one day and he was like, have you sent that application in? And I was like, no, yeah, it's on my list. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going to quit wasting my breath, man. You know, you clearly aren't going to do it. So, you know, I'll quit wasting my time. You know how I feel about it. And I was like, all right.
The old guilt trip.
So I sent it in. They got back to me right away. I mean, it's a different organization than it was when I went, unfortunately. But it was set up to help veterans and first responders overcome their demons. And in the Black Hills of South Dakota, I go there, small group. I think there was two of us that were not veterans. The rest of the group, everyone was veterans. And, you know, had corrections, law enforcement, a couple of firefighters. And then one of the women that was in my group, she was an Army veteran. She was a line medic that served over in Iraq. And just a really cool chick. And she'd overcome so much. I mean, she's got 2 Purple Hearts. Like she
saw some shit.
Yeah. And what she did, you know, I don't know that she ever did the why. She did, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? I keep on doing shit to make me feel something different. But she was going through that self-punishment. And but she made some decisions to put her life on the right track. And now she's a licensed clinical social worker that works counseling vets and you know, combat vets or veterans that are victims of military sexual trauma. That's her specialty, is combat PTSD and military sexual trauma. And she and I became very good friends, and now we're engaged. We met on April 22nd, 2021, and we're getting married April 22nd of this year.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
And if not for all of the bullshit, you know, the dark places that I've been, I would have never met her.
Yeah.
I mean, we're both from Florida. She grew up in the Panhandle in Panama City. I grew up in Central Florida. If not for South Dakota, I mean, shit, man, two native Floridians had to go to South Dakota to meet, and my life has changed dramatically. Like, we keep on growing as people, and our purpose is so aligned with one another. You know, like, all we want to do is help other people that have been, you know, that maybe are going through what we went through, and just help them see that that's not the end. You know, like, there's so much more, and what we've experienced, the mistakes that we've made, the decisions that have destroyed our lives, you know, are those decisions that make us so amazing. You know, like, if you can use those experiences to become better, to learn, like, this event led to this event, to this event, to this event, to this event. I made decisions that in the moment seemed like, well, things can't get any worse, or this is going to make me forget about this shit for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't think about tomorrow in that moment. And so whatever repercussions happen, man, they happen, and it can make things worse.
Yeah.
But when you make that decision, when you start to go down that path where you're learning, you're growing, you're becoming better, you're improving, and you figure out your purpose. And like I said, man, and you said it in a lot of different ways already, is I think that we're all here to add value to the people in our lives. And, you know, the only way that we can keep adding value to other people is when we add value to ourselves, we grow, and we become better able to add value to those around us. And how we add value, that's up to us. You know, that's what makes us unique, and our experiences give us the ability to be that person that can change other people's lives and show them how they can change other people's lives. Yeah. Because I think when you add value to somebody else for their benefit, not yours, but for their benefit, and you see them succeed at something, and you see them grow, you see them become better, and you see them become happy. And that, I think, is like the purest form of fulfillment. Mm-hmm. You know, we all want to be happy, but that real, like, that pure happiness comes from being fulfilled, that you know your purpose and you're aligned with that and you're achieving your purpose. And, you know, you might not get it right every day, but I mean, as long as you know, yeah, but if you know the direction that you're going, and I mean, you might get off track a little bit, but if you know where you're going, you're on the right track. You know, I mean, we might take different paths than we had planned on, but we'll get there. Dude,
this has been great. This has been a really good podcast. We're coming up on the hour now. And so, oh, man, if someone wants to reach out to you and connect with you, Dave, and because this is such a powerful story, and you have so much value to give with your experiences and with everything that you've been through and being able to make it through the other side, if anyone wants to follow you, what's the best place to connect with you on?
Just go to my website, hollenbachleadership.com, HOLLENBACH, leadership.com. All of my social media is there. You can email me directly from the website. Anybody listening, you know, I feel like they could contact you just as easily and get, I mean, like, I think you and I are simpatico, man. And, you know, anybody wants to connect, I'd be happy to talk with anybody if they're not sure what resources are available in their area. I have a resources page, mental health resources page on my website that has a lot of resources for veterans and first responders. And I'd be happy to walk anybody through that. And even if you're not a veteran or first responder, still happy to help in any way I can. And really, I mean, it makes my day when people reach out. So,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
So yeah, please go to my website, check it out, and you can find my podcast there, my book. You can find my book, Fireproof: Your Grand Strategy for Transforming Failure into Fuel for Your Future. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all that. So yeah, man, thank you so much for sharing your platform with me. And
definitely, anytime.
Freaking cool conversation.
It was. This is really good. This is very cathartic. It was great. What last question I always ask everybody, Dave, all my guests is this. And if you had the opportunity to sit with, learn from, have a conversation with, break bread with 3 individuals, anyone in history, living or deceased, who would those 3 be and why?
Well, never even. What comes to my mind is this is going to take some exploring, because these are the first 3 names that came to my head. So Ben Franklin, Tesla, and Epictetus. Yeah.
Those are actually great. It was crazy. I've had Benjamin Franklin a lot lately. Dude, don't get me wrong. He's an entrepreneur. He was brilliant. Like his autobiography is amazing.
Yeah.
He was a brilliant man, even in his 20s. Like he was a mover and a shaker.
Yeah.
Right.
Man.
Everyone thinks of old Benjamin Franklin, but no, that guy was brilliant from a young age.
Yeah.
That's the reason why he's one of the founding fathers. So I love him. And then Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, man.
I had somebody say Nikola Tesla a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So he's a good one too.
Yeah. I would just like to know some of the stuff that died with him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You definitely know a lot of stuff died with him. Yeah. Definitely. He was a brilliant inventor.
Yeah.
So no, those are great. Those are great. Dave, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it, man. This was a great conversation. For those of you watching, it took a lot of strength and vulnerability for Dave here to share his story and to hopefully touch some of you that may not be in the exact same position, but you know what rock bottom feels like. You know what it feels like to be in a hole where you feel like the ladder's been pulled out and there's no way for you to climb out. And what I want to tell you, I'm sure Dave would say the same thing, is that that's not the case. The ladder's there. And you have the key to the cage that you're in, the self-imposed jail cell that you're in. You do have the key. It's in your pocket. And we want to be the ones that and that's what I do is I help you to find that key so that you can let yourself out. And I'm sure Dave wants to do the same. And so always feel free to reach out and do me a favor, share this content. This is so powerful. It's such a great message. And there's so many people that are living right now that are going through hell on earth within their mind and living with these demons. And there is a way to get through it. And so do me a favor and share this content with somebody else that can get value, that can probably change their life. So make sure you rate, review, subscribe, share, right? And that's how we can grow. That's how we can impact more people, just by sharing. That's how so many people can be impacted. And we can have a better environment for everybody, honestly. So this has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.